Welcome to the Heat of Command podcast, mastering the art of fire service leadership.
Where we, your hosts, aim to teach you how to use introspection and self-reflection to be your most authentic, genuine self, leader, and human being.
And now, here are your hosts. This is Kyle Matusik.
And Kerry Henderson. Thanks for joining.
Welcome to a very exciting episode of the Heat of Command podcast. Today, we have a full panel of people going back on the last three first place winners of the Darley essay contest. And we have Kevin Sofen from Darley, who kind of coordinates all this and has been involved with every single one of us who entered the competition and took first, and myself in second place. So it's pretty exciting to be here. We have, of course, my partner in crime, Kerry Henderson, who won in 2022. I can't believe it. You're already going on your fourth year, Kevin. That's crazy. Lindsay Judah, who won in 23, and Jamie Howarth, who just won this last year. So that's pretty exciting to have all three winners here and kind of have a quick little discussion on some leadership and see where this all goes. So first, I just want to go around the circle and have everybody introduce themselves, and then we'll kind of go into some questions and some discussion. So we'll start, and we're just going to do this because I want to make her feel like a guest on her own show. We'll start with my partner, Kerry, who is the 2022 winner.
Well, I think our listeners probably know my whole life story at this point, and they've heard all about how Darley changed everything for me. And so back in 2022, when Kyle and I entered this competition, we were first and second place winners. So Kyle, don't sell yourself on this one, sell yourself short on this one. So you are part of this as well. But that year, Teeks graciously let both of us speak. And so that's how Kyle and I got connected and got started. Didn't know each other before that, but our listeners know most of that story. So I'm excited to hear Jamie and Lindsay's stories too, of kind of how this changed things for you and the message that you're out there spreading. And our listeners know Jamie as well, because she was our recent guest too. So excited to have her back.
Awesome. Well, thanks for introducing yourself to your own show. That's pretty awesome. Lindsay, what about you?
Yeah, so I currently serve as a national and international consultant, graduate professor from out Austin State, and I also serve as a division chief for a Metro Fire Rescue Agency in Pinellas County. And I submitted a essay in 2023 and was selected as the first place winner. I also had an opportunity to meet you all at Teeks and present at Teeks, and I really appreciate the opportunity that not only Darley has provided, but also the National Fallen Firefighter Foundation.
Well, awesome. Thanks for being here and thanks for joining us. Looking forward to the conversation. And then this last year's winner, Jamie, a little introduction.
Hello. Thank you for having me back on. I'm really excited about this. I've been looking forward to it. I have about 25 years of emergency services experience. I'm currently a battalion chief in a large metropolitan department. I am assigned to the Operations Bureau, which I really like because it has me connected with all the people. We have a chief of our department who does a lot of stuff nationally, and she is who brought the opportunity of the Darley essay to our jurisdiction. When I read it, it was about leadership, which is something I'm very passionate about. So I figured I would put my thoughts out there, and I ended up coming in first place and getting the opportunity to speak at Teeks. I would say that with Darley and with Teeks, it has also opened doors for me. I'm not as far along as you and Kerry are, but I am getting started, and I can say that Teeks was wonderful to speak at. I've had a lot of opportunities through the Darley essay contest, and I have started my own podcast as well on leadership, and I would not have had the guts to launch it without Kyle and Kerry being a guest on their show and just like how easy it was to talk. And I'm like, okay, I feel like I can do this. I feel like I can contribute, and I feel like I have a lot to say. And so it gave me the courage to go out there and do something I've been wanting to do for a long time. So I want to go back to Teeks and speak again if they'll have me. And so it has definitely changed my direction so quickly, and the path that I have to really get some messages out there that I think are vital to the fire service.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. It's you just go and see what opportunities go in front of you, and sometimes you just got to take that leap, and you never know what doors are going to open. And I think that's kind of the most exciting part of, putting yourself out there. You just never know. So awesome story, and we'll get more into that here in a little bit, and then bringing it back to Kevin from Darley. Introduce yourself, and then a little background on the Darley essay contest would be great.
Thank you, Kyle, for letting me be a guest on this podcast. And yeah, I started at Darley in 2012, right when I graduated college, and had the fortune of knowing and getting to know and spend time with Paul Darley and the Darley Company. And throughout my time, did a lot of business development on new products from virtual reality training, water purification, drones, wearables, software, and had a lot of fun in working closely with the fire service, tinkering with new solutions that could help firefighters make better, faster, more informed decisions. And throughout this, working very closely with the fire service, me not being a firefighter myself, I was very fortunate to have the guidance and insight from Gary Breeze. If you don't know him, Google him. He's been one of the best mentors, father-like figures, frankly, just friends to me in the industry. And he had been thinking of some way to replicate what the Naval Institute does in terms of an essay contest to really get people to think critically. And while Darley is a sales organization, Darley is capitalistic in every way, shape, or form, but also really cares about the fire service, really cares about the military, and continues and does all sorts of stuff to embetter the fire service. Gary and I dreamed up this idea of what could we do? What if we could do something that was really trying to elevate the fire service in a way that was just trying to help emerging fire leaders and get people to think outside the box and think creatively and leverage the Darley ecosystem, whether it's the industry partners to all the other .gov, .org, .edu partners. And it's taken the first couple years, and now we're into year 4. I feel like we've got better every year in terms of running it and working with judges, and I can get more into that. But it's truly a platform to try and empower first responders, firefighters to think, to write, to try and publish, to get the opportunity to speak and participate in podcasts. And while don't get me wrong, I love working with fire chiefs, but I truly love working with all levels of the fire service, particularly firefighters, captains, lieutenants, battalion chiefs, deputy chiefs. That's really where you see some of the lifeblood of what's really happening in the fire service. And this essay contest now has been a medium to enhance that. And I'm just a piece of the puzzle that's kind of been helping support that. And I'm excited about one, having all the winners on this podcast, but also to spotlight what's going to happen in 2025 and dive more into the impact and yeah, just get to collaborate and work with great individuals like yourself.
Yeah, you talk about that platform, and I think it's truly an amazing platform for a lot of people to try and get involved because, sometimes in our culture, it's all about who, and in our world, it's about who you know and not what you know. But in this process, it doesn't matter who you know. Your essay is going to get submitted. It's going to get judged blindly, and the best will prevail. So it's truly an opportunity to get yourself out there and open up some doors. So as we, look at the topics that everybody had submitted, one of the biggest things that Kerry and I are curious about, and Kerry will share as well, but Lindsay, I guess we'll start with you, kind of go over what you wrote about, kind of your ideas behind leadership, where you were then in terms of that subject, and has anything changed over time in terms of how you view your approach on leadership?
Wow. All right.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Remember everything you've mentioned. Initially, I responded to a prompt related to recruitment and retention and inclusion. I think that may be important to highlight. We each responded to different prompts, so our topics may be a little different. I highlighted a lot of material within the essay and then subsequent presentations related to how we can be better inclusive within our organization. We can really reflect on things the military is doing, things that the International Association of Chiefs of Police are doing, and really reflect on content that's already been created, such as Chief Ben Flegel. He wrote about psychological safety in female firefighters for his EFO paper, and recruitment and retention of women firefighters, which Chief Heather Marquis wrote for her naval postgraduate thesis. So that's been a real focus on my content and presentation. And I think as far as perspective moving forward in leadership, I think my perspective is very similar. My position was different then. I was performing exclusively as a consultant at the time that I wrote that. I was prompted to write, and I never would have thought to contribute to an essay competition. But when I was asked, I figured, well, I guess I'll do that with a little bit of my time. And I'm grateful that I did because it has opened doors for me. And it really highlighted that, quite frankly, I think writing is therapeutic. And I plan to, lead. And now I get the opportunity to serve as a judge for the Darley essay competition. So it kind of moves forward. You get to participate. You may or may not win, but you may be able to become a judge in the future to blindly judge essay submissions in the future.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. And in terms of like recruitment and retention, what you wrote about, are you seeing and I understand progress could be slow in our industry in some things, but the progress, is it there? Or is there still kind of this big push that we have to kind of adapt some of our ways on some of the things that you spoke about and wrote about? How do you feel as industry wide that we're doing in terms of recruitment, retention, and where we can go?
So interestingly, I cite a paper that I actually worked on with the Florida Fire Chiefs Association. It's the Florida Fire Service Recruitment and Retention document. It's available online for free on their website. But what's really neat is individuals through FFCA went around and conducted focus group sessions with different firefighters and fire chiefs around the state. And since that project and paper, the state of Arizona has done something similar. And also the IAFC picked it up in the southeastern section to identify strategies and best practices for recruitment and retention. I also believe the USFA completed a document related to recruitment and retention. I think there are a lot of strategies available to us that we can employ within our specific organizations, and they're not so geographically specific. I think when we talk to our friends and colleagues across the country who are experiencing similar challenges, one approach that I think has been very helpful is hiring people without credentials through a cadet process and bringing them into the organization, training them, and then they're able to perform those duties out on the street. I think that's been one strategy that's been successful.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks. And then we'll send it over to Kerry. I'll go to Kerry next in terms of kind of where you initially wrote on, and I mean, we're going back some time now because, Darley's going on 5 years. What you wrote about and kind of your growth and your viewpoints now, have they shifted? Have they changed? And I know a lot of our listeners know a lot, but kind of just that quick where I was to where I'm at today in terms of kind of that authenticity.
Okay. Yeah. And like Lindsay brought up, we all had a prompt. And the year that Kyle and I entered, the topic was about what makes for an exceptional company officer, what leadership makes for an exceptional company officer. And I love that topic because, like I've said before, I think our company officers are the heart of the fire service, and they have the ability to make so much change in your culture and the day-to-day lives of the firefighters that we're all responsible for. So I loved that topic. And I had really been interested in authentic leadership right before that competition opened up. And so I really felt compelled to write about it and how important it was to be authentic in your leadership style in the fire service. And what I hadn't realized until after and Kyle and I doing all this work together is really how much my journey meant for that essay. And I don't think I knew it yet then. I knew it was important to be authentic, but I didn't realize kind of the journey I had gone on before that, and being a woman in the fire service and how I really, really wanted to have a masculine approach, and it just wasn't working for me. And once I figured out how to be compassionate and empathetic and really be soft, and that was more my style, and how much better that worked for me, and how I could blend that with raising high expectations and being very compassionate and empathetic in the fire service was interesting, but it worked for me. And so I loved that I got to figure that out for myself as part of this process.
Awesome. And, you go back and listen, you could hear all of Kerry's and my story and where we've grown and gone. So Jamie, I know, you just wrote your paper. So it's like where you're at today to where, yeah, maybe like looking forward, and it could be more of a challenging question of, I guess, the anticipation of kind of your leadership mindset after doing this paper. We know leadership isn't stagnant, so it's a constant process of, I guess, what are you looking forward to in terms of, explain what you wrote about, kind of the topic, and then where you hope to maybe go or how that mindset continually stays ahead of the curve to constantly kind of evaluate what is going on in our industry.
Yeah, so my essay topic was on transforming leadership in the fire service by embracing change and inclusivity. And change in the fire service, change in a human factor way is just something that makes people really uncomfortable. And it kind of feeds off of what Lindsay said, that we're hiring different backgrounds and we're hiring a more diverse work group. And if you've heard anything that I've said or have had the chance to listen, I believe that we are a metaculture, which means like we just have a background of a bunch of different people, and then we come together into the fire service and we kind of make our own culture. So my essay was about fostering inclusivity and how do you take those different backgrounds and bring them together with practical application. And it's practical application from every step, right? So it's not just practical application from the officer or the chief level, but from the recruit level all the way up through the ranks. How can we apply different concepts to put everybody on the same page and ensure that we are creating high functioning, efficient teams when we go out the door? And I'm really passionate about that. I'm passionate about us having the ability to support our mission. A lot of people don't focus a lot on the mission of the fire service, and that's the reason why we're here, to support the communities and to support the mission. So a lot of the stuff that I wrote about specifically had to do with that and securing buy-in and practical application for those things. As I said on your last podcast, when you allowed me to be a guest, like one of the simple changes was just creating a leadership library so that people had access to various resources and allowed for them to be involved in the conversation at any level. And I feel like that has really pushed forward and helped people to be involved in the conversation, and also to have knowledge and actual skills to move forward with it. I will say that since I've written the essay and this opportunity has been presented to me, I have gotten a lot of opportunities. So speaking at Teats was wonderful. It was something that I had not done on that large of a scale yet. And it really just ignited a fire under me. I just loved it. And it made me feel like I have a platform to be able to affect change in the fire service, but still preserve the traditions of the fire service, which is a really hard balance. Going forward, I've been offered a adjunct instructor job at the National Fire Academy on leadership, which is really awesome, and it's something that I'm considering. And I would like to just stay connected with people from all over the country to learn various backgrounds and various issues that they're having, to try and come up with practical, easy to implement solutions to move the culture forward.
Yeah, awesome. And I think one thing we spoke about too at Teaks was, as you're going through your leadership journey, and, Kerry and I talk about this too, I think the biggest thing is we're not swinging that pendulum so far the other way. And when we
Yeah.
look at all these topics that everybody talks about, like, we are all very passionate about the things we talk about, but it's always that caution of don't go too far one way, because then it's going to be just a problem in a completely different way. It's taking the good from, the ways of old and still keeping those alive while bringing some progress forward. So, it's
Mm,
a constant
yes.
challenge.
And to still have structure, like we still have to operate within that paramilitary organization. So we're not saying that you get rid of that structure or get rid of the boundaries or the direction that we're going when it comes to operating in that. But we are saying, and I think everybody is kind of on the same page with this, that there are different ways to get from point A to point B.
Yeah.
Where you can still preserve that structure, but be able to do it from different angles and different approaches. And you just do that by continuing to learn and grow. So that's what I'm really looking forward to, is the growth that's going to happen. And I love watching other people grow too. So that growth, the light bulb coming on with other people and them understanding the concepts and then feeling empowered to implement that, is something that just really is really the drive behind why I want to continue forward with this.
Awesome. And so, Kevin, to you, not being, working solely in our industry and doing the job, but being in our industry and then being a part of this leadership essay contests and networking more with, some of these top leaders within our industry, kind of what have you learned? I'm curious, what have you learned maybe more about the culture of the fire service and or, where leadership was maybe 3 or 4 years ago and where it is today?
I mean, one, again, I'll reemphasize that I'm not a firefighter, but I'm part of the reason why that we built this structure is that we've had over 230 essay submissions in the last 3 years, and there's no way that I would be able to fairly judge them, because when I read a lot of them, most of them are awesome. This is why we have an odd number of judges, around 11 to 13, went to 13 last year, to really put it through the ringer and go through this 3-step judging process. Just because, again, it's been awesome, and I pinch myself as I hear all of you talk about how this has been something that's positively impacted your careers in certain ways, and frankly, that really fires me up and makes me excited about continuing to do more of this. So thank you. But from what I've seen, I mean, I think there's a lot of different dynamics of how leadership is talked about, and I heard someone mention before of another leadership talk. It's like kind of like being the dead horse type mentality. Not necessarily saying I agree with that, but what I like about what I hear and read from a lot of the kind of mid-level and kind of emerging leaders in the fire service, it is taking a little bit more of a pragmatic approach. And I think, Jamie, you had mentioned about it's not throwing out our traditions. It's a matter of ingraining and keeping a lot of our amazing core foundations of the fire service, while also continue to evolve to some of the realities of the evolving workforce at different generations, meeting people where they're at, not trying to look at millennials and Gen Z as just these prima donna baby type fire service members, but it's they're a large force to be reckoned with, and it's better to try and meet them where they're at and trying to change certain things in terms of how we're approaching physical and mental health, how we're approaching just relationships, inner and external relationships. So I mean, I've had the fortune also working with the International Association of Fire Chiefs and have learned a lot from some of the best fire chiefs in the country. And frankly, I think this is my own personal take, but I feel like sometimes some of the best fire chiefs are often heavily ridiculed and heavily kind of criticized for being slightly different and not and this is also Kevin Sofen speaking. Sometimes it seems like it's easier when you're at the top to do nothing, because you're probably about to retire in a few years, and to make any substantial change, it's sort of better off maybe just kind of staying put. Having said that, that's not the case amongst all fire service leaders, and I think you see the very resilient, triumphant, brave, fearless leaders that are willing to make change for their own department, even if it's 1 or 2 years that they're leaving. But it's even more so, in my opinion, leaning towards middle management in the fire service, and you're seeing battalion chiefs, deputy chiefs, lieutenants, and even firefighters continue to embody leadership more, in the sense that leading by example. And again, I'm only saying this from I've been on probably 6 fire trucks in my life and gone the range of different calls, and I work with fire service members every day. But yeah, that's my sort of my hot take in the leadership side. But at the same time, we have had a couple different topics. From the initial one was leadership from the battalion deputy chief perspective. The second one focused on to recruitment and retention. The most recent one on diversity in the fire service. So I think all 3 of those topics brought out unique nuances, and I think the idea of a contrarian approach is needed in the fire service, because sometimes those voices can be maybe drowned out a little bit in the kind of the day-to-day status quo. And frankly, just hearing and seeing the amazing leaders and all of you speak up and talk about this, to me, that is real progress happening right before our eyes. And kudos and give snaps and claps to all of you, because that's what's needed to continue to drive the fire service forward. And I'm just a piece of the puzzle that's helped create this platform, and I'm excited to see it again in 2025 and beyond.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks. It's kind of interesting to hear from someone kind of outside the industry, their take on it. So pretty cool, and kind of a great segue, kind of where I want to go, because we always like challenging people in terms of, we take our mentality of what we view leadership as and what we look at. And I kind of want to pose a question to where we think maybe the industry's going. I think a lot of our thoughts on leadership is a little more progressive, the way we think, forward thinking. We challenge the norm, we challenge things. Do we feel like it's very, like there's just little groups that are progressing well, but as a culture, fire service wide, nationally or around the globe, are we really going to affect change in terms of shifting this culture? And the reason I ask that is because we look at one of the simple things out there that's really easy and has been under scrutiny for at least 10 years now. And we look at mental health and suicide rates in the fire service. And I remember that became mainstream in like 2014, 2015. And as an industry, we do a great job about talking about it, what suicide is, what we should be doing, but what actions are actually behind it, and have we seen change? And over the last 10 years, I don't think we have, right? Firefighters, they're most likely to die by suicide, but then anything else. So it's easy to talk about things. And yes, I guarantee you we have our departments out there that are very progressive in mental health and taking care of their members. But industry-wide, are we there yet? I don't think so. So when we look at our individual leadership topics or leadership as a whole, and we want to progress forward, what's your thoughts on, are we going to have our little cliques of people and organizations that get it? And as an industry and a culture, do you think we'll ever get there? I think, Jamie, we'll start with you this time. I know you had your hand up, so if you had something to add to that, go ahead and do that too.
I was actually going to say something about kind of piggyback off what Kevin said, as far as things like the Darley essay contest has allowed for all of us to kind of come forward with our thoughts. There's so many more people out there that have these unique thoughts and have that out of the box. And I really feel like this is just going to grow and grow. And I do think that is one of the things that helps affect change. I got hired in the fire department I work for now almost 21 years ago. And I can tell you for certain that the culture has changed. From the time that I got in until now, it has definitely moved forward and has become more inclusive. And a lot of stuff has changed with training and how we approach stuff, and also with mental health. I believe that change comes from experiencing a personal, significant emotional event. And in the fire service, there's a lot of significant emotional events that happen to us that do cause PTSD in some cases, but also just change our mind frame and the way things work. And I think as a whole, as we go through and we have line of duty death reports that are much more publicized now, and with social media and with podcasts and the ability to speak in these different places, you can share those significant emotional events with other people so that they can relate to it. And that helps to really affect change and put people in that position of, what if that happened to me? And I feel like that's really important with the change in the fire service. Do I think we are there? No, we have a long way to go, but we have come a long way. And I don't want to forget or to not add value to how far we have come in the last 20 plus years that I've worked for the fire department, and just how much better it is for that next generation that's coming in. So I'm really excited to see how it's going to change in the next 20 years and how much we're going to move forward. And this is how that happens, by sharing stories, by not the being seen, not heard is no longer something that should be accepted. It should be seen and heard, so that you're sharing those experiences and you're able to move that culture forward with that. Everybody gets a say at the table.
Awesome. Kerry, we'll go to you. Kind of your thoughts on that and the challenges that are faced, in terms of pockets of good change and progressive organizations to to the industry as a whole across the country. And Lindsay, we'll go to you next, but I did mute your mic, so you'll have to unmute that.
I have to figure out how to put this into words that make a lot of sense. So when I was first tasked with looking at mental health in our agency, and the peer team concept was just coming out. And so some departments were starting peer teams. And like Kyle, like you've said before, we're very good at, here's a problem, what's a solution, fix it quick, right? Because that's how we operate on a day-to-day basis. We go to an emergency, we fix it, anywhere from 20, 30 minutes to 6 or 8 hours, maybe a couple days, but then we're done with that problem and we move on to something else. So a lot of decision makers in the fire service are just hardwired to find a quick solution to a problem and move on. And so I think the peer team concept, is wonderful, but it can't just be the quick fix. And so the more I started looking at mental health in the fire service and the stress first aid model, and I think it goes back to when you're a firefighter and you're in a bad place, just like anyone in the world, you're in a bad place, you want a quick solution. And if it's not a quick solution, the mindset becomes, I'm never going to feel better. This is never going to get better for me. So what's the solution to that, right? So suicide starts to pop up in your mind. So we have to convince people that it does take hard work to get better, to feel better, and that therapy is really where it's at. And we have to convince people, and our peer team folks are really your therapy soldiers out there that are pushing people to more intensive treatment. Peer teams are great for checking on people, but really they're there to recognize when someone needs something else, someone needs something more. And that if we can convince people that, yeah, what you're going through right now sucks and you feel terrible, but you can get better. And the military talks about this, and that's some of the stress first aid research that's come out, is just convincing people that you can get better if you do the work.
Yeah, it's almost, to hit on what Kevin said, about the chiefs that get scrutinized so much. And, it might be because it's not just talk, but it's action behind their talk, and it's against that norm of what our culture is. And, when you operate in that type of environment personally, you're setting yourself up to be scrutinized when you try to go against the grain. But when we look at effective leadership, I think we might all agree that that's what effective leadership looks like. Like, you're ready for that challenge and to withstand the scrutiny that you're going to face, and knowing you're going to face it going into it, but you have this different outlook, differing amongst the masses that, you're passionate about and want to drive home. So awesome stuff. Lindsay?
Yeah, and if you're a fire chief, that you're willing to give your folks the time to get better, you're willing to give folks, space. And, there was the old fire service, and it's still probably a lot of places, is, that's your own personal problem. You got to use all your leave up, and then you're out of leave, and then what do you do? But the brave fire chiefs, like Kevin is talking about, figure out a way to bend those rules so that we help our own people.
We'll go into kind of a last minute advertisement in terms of leadership for everybody. But before we do that, Kevin, talk to us about what's coming up in 2025 and the essay contest that is fastly approaching here.
Yeah, I think as this kind of parlayed into a good conversation about where we're at, when we were thinking about what to the essay contest on this year, we could have done a range of things. There's no shortage of issues and challenges that the fire service is facing. We surveyed the 225 everyone who submitted essays, and there was a range of different themes, but one that kept coming up and up in different capacities was mental health. And I would totally agree, Kerry, what you mentioned in terms of the dynamic of therapy is there's this kind of this stigma, especially even sometimes with men, of like, oh, if you go to therapy, you're weak and you're a baby and stuff like that. And it's like totally not the case. One of my therapists told me that the healthiest people are the ones sitting in this chair the most often. I actually have a therapy session later today. I've been started going again the last 3 months, and just talking out loud to a third party person that's not my wife or my dog or my parents, like, it feels wonderful. There's a lot of merit and health to it. But I think with the whole idea of mental health, we wanted to take an approach this year of not, hey, give us all the solutions to how we can address mental health in the fire service, but taking a little bit of a 40,000 foot view, a problem framing approach, trying to get the fire service to take a step back and trying to understand the why behind the mental health issues in the fire service and looking at how unique is the fire service in regards to mental health. And in that, we know that mental health struggles in the fire service are acknowledged, but do we really understand why these struggles exist and ultimately persist? And looking at too of we know fire service members face very unique stressors, but we don't really grasp how these challenges compare to the general public and this kind of correlation of suicides and issues that are happening in the fire service compared to the general public. And we really want to dive into why. And so this is a different approach in terms of not necessarily throwing solutions at the wall, which of course they're welcomed in some capacity, but we really want to take a step back and dive into the why and hopefully with it kind of into that Einstein quote, if you had 60 minutes to solve a problem, you spend 55 minutes thinking of the question and then 5 minutes asking it. So I think that's a little bit of the mindset here of really trying to dive into the why. I have some info on my phone. It actually opens up March 24th and they'll close June 2nd. We're going to have 13 judges again, and it's available on darley.com. I mean, if you just type in Darley Essay Contest, it'll pop up Darley Essay Competition. And I'm really excited to see this be a piece of the puzzle, be a big piece of the fire service. And another big thing we can't ignore the last 2 years, we partner with the National Fallen Firefighter Foundation, and that's really been a huge boost of just continue to establish legitimacy and eyeballs. And so I also have the great partnership with TEEX where the winners get to speak there. We have good alignment with Fire Rescue One, Firehouse, Clarion, IFC in terms of kind of spotlighting the winners and then trying to get published in those mediums as well as other podcasts. So just encourage you, if you, as everyone in this podcast has mentioned, if you are a fire service member that is passionate about the fire service and has some good ideas, submit this year. I think we've created enough stickiness that I hope this is around way after even I'm gone. So this is something that will continue to be a platform for the fire service. And that's what we're going to go deep into this year. And if you are a partner or someone in the industry that wants to collaborate and work with the essay winners as well, we want to hear from you. And yeah, I'm excited. So thank you all as well for participating as being judges, because as an alumni, your work does not end once a competition's over. So I appreciate that.
That's awesome. Hook them for the long term. That's great. Yeah, it's great, Kevin, and what you're doing, what Darley's doing is really awesome. And I think, for the younger leaders, especially out there, or the aspiring leaders, this is an opportunity to really put yourself out there and put your thoughts and ideas, because that's what we need. We need the future to start speaking now, right? Get the young people up and talking and listening and seeing their viewpoints as well.
Here we go. Let me think. Jamie mentioned the importance and influence that company officers have, and I couldn't agree more. I think that is so important to understand. I love the idea of having the leadership library accessible. I do have a link tree. It's at Chief Judah. And actually my presentation references from the Darley essay presentation that I've done, the information is available on my link tree. And I just recently read a book by Francis and Anne. It's called Unleash, the Unapologetic Leader's Guide to Empowering Everyone Around You. And both of the ladies highlight honoring our past, creating a change mandate, and providing an optimistic way forward. I think those are such incredible points, because I absolutely agree. We have to honor our past, and we don't want to create such change that we don't understand the unintended consequences that may occur from the change that we force. And then as far as the therapy goes, I absolutely agree. I think that everyone deserves a therapist. I believe a subject matter expert on the topic of suicide and firefighters would be Chief Darley out of Raleigh, North Carolina. There is a conference or symposium in March in Nashville, Tennessee, that the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation First Responder Center of Excellence is hosting there, and they'll be talking about suicide prevention. But I believe you can also, different organizations can request Chief Frank Leeds and Chief Dina Ali to come present at their organizations and talk about the suicide prevention tips that they have and the importance of peer support. And as far as the cultural changes moving forward, I think one thing that I've always tried to highlight with my own personnel is really focus on your sphere of influence. And I think what's special about these different platforms and social opportunities that we have that Jamie mentioned, our sphere of influence may shift. And I think it has shifted. Where before we really relied on this word of mouth and having to go to a conference, but now we can share ideas like this on a podcast or in a text message and help push healthy agendas forward for our industry.
Yeah, awesome. Great points. Thanks for sharing. There's just always so much, and I think that's the real crux of being an effective leader in our industry and in our society today, just not our culture. There's just so much. There's so much to think about. There's so much to do. And then it's just prioritizing and kind of staying that course, keeping that sphere of influence. I like that term, of people around you to keep you going and motivated as well. So a lot of challenges in a leadership role, but a lot of great ideas, thoughts, and opinions that can add so much value into our culture and our industry. So it's all awesome stuff. So kind of to wrap it up a little bit, I want to go around our three winners. We'll start with Kerry, and kind of like a 30-second advertisement of your leadership, like where you're at, what people need to work on, like your slogan, your thing. Go.
You go first, Kyle.
No.
Actually. Yeah,
I was
absolutely.
like, you're a guest
Absolutely.
on your show.
Nope.
It's interesting when, because Kerry and I, authenticity and introspection, and that's where we were at, 3 years ago, and we still strongly believe in those things. But it's interesting how it grows. And I think, speaking with Jamie down at Teeks, and it kind of some thoughts that just are clicking in your head, and even Lindsay just hit on it, not swinging that pendulum so far away, not making decisions that you don't know the consequences for. Because I think in our society, just not our culture, we have done that so much up until now, where we identify a problem, we create solutions, and we have no idea what the consequences are. And then all of a sudden, we're in a new problem. We fixed the old one, now we're in a new one. So it's like kind of this balance of, we still have to constantly self-reflect, look at ourselves, but we also still need to be tough, right? We still need to have a thick skin for the things we see and the talk around a firehouse and all this stuff. Like, there has to be this balance of things. When we talk about soft skills, we're not saying you need to become soft, you need to become tough. And some of these skills, empathy, compassion, are tough, but we still need to have that thick skin in the things that we see and the things that we do. So it's still a tough job. So it's, that constant balance of things is really kind of where I'm at. So if you have that idea and you're young and you just use caution and swinging yourself so far into it, take both sides and constantly evaluate, constantly assess, constantly evaluate. And it's okay to adapt and change. You don't need to always stick to something. How is that? All right.
That was good.
All right.
Yes,
now you.
Okay, now me. So I would say 30-second view of leadership for me moving forward is I really am into lately how you set high expectations and get people to deliver on those expectations. And that's by caring about them deeply and where the balance of that is. So sometimes I think we lower our expectations sometimes because we don't know how to set them correctly. And you can't set high expectations for someone and help them follow through on them if you aren't being incredibly compassionate and empathetic to begin with. So
awesome.
30 seconds or less.
Jamie, to you.
So for me, and this is actually what my next podcast episode is on, is empowerment versus entitlement. As leaders, we have to understand the balance between empowerment and not crossing that line into entitlement so that you do have those set high expectations and it's fair across the board. One thing I think the fire service forgets to do is reevaluate when they make changes. It's like, we're going to make that square peg fit in that round hole because that's the decision that we made. And to be humble and have humility to reevaluate when you do make changes and then make adjustments as you go. I agree very strongly in empowerment versus entitlement. And I think it is the way that we can move the fire service forward is understanding the difference between the two and implementing them correctly with compassion and empathy.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. And then Lindsay, kind of your 30-second advertisement on leadership.
Well, I definitely agree with a human-centered leadership approach and having agility. That's really what I hear from you all. And I think that it's very important in our industry that we understand we have such a diverse workforce, and we really have to understand where our individuals are coming from, value their perspectives, and share when, especially in leadership positions, when we can't address things or we can't change things to what they're asking for, to at least help them understand why. And I really think, for just 1 second, I'd like to highlight the need for the fact that we are so much better together. I think that with our stakeholders, our workforce, our leadership teams, and even our locals, we have to accomplish things together. And I think that we will be able to really move the industry forward if we're working in unison and in harmony.
Yeah, awesome. Great stuff. Great stuff all around. And Kevin, kind of bring it back to you, give you a chance at your last 30 seconds, being kind of sitting here and listening to all this, kind of what you feeling over there? I mean, a lot of this, you spearheaded a lot of this, and it's pretty awesome to get, four of us together who work in very different parts of the country, and to have these conversations is pretty remarkable.
Well, I have two quotes that I kind of live by that also kind of intertwine with the fire service. The first one is, those who have the ability to know have the duty to act. And I think this platform is really meant to be something where if you've got that idea and you've got that fire burning in you, don't just let it sit inside you and eat you up. There's a lot of other like-minded, incredible first responders, sisters and brothers around the country, like everyone on this call, that can be a great support network to kind of give you that extra boost and confidence to apply for that promotion, to kind of submit something here, to start something local, to start some sort of local small change. Change doesn't have to mean completely redoing your entire fire structure leadership. It can be something very small that's kind of week after week, after month, after year, to where you can really make pragmatic change. So that's my first thing. The second thing that I live by, it's somewhat relevant to all things of life, but it's the Marcus Aurelius. I got it from Ryan Holiday, Daily Stoic. But the mindset, memento mori. You could leave life right now. So not looking at death as something to be afraid of, but looking at death that gives you a sense of purpose while we're here and alive today. Yeah, you could have that mindset of like, oh, everything's going to shit, we're all going to die. But it's more so of like looking at our death as something that gives us a sense of purpose today, to take action, to make positive change while we're still on this earth for this short period of time. So I think that's something that I live by, and I know many fire service members have that mindset of really trying to make everyone around them better and not letting time waste, because it's easy to just let weeks and months and years go by, be complacent. But again, if you've got that fire inside you, reach out to members like people on this call, submit the Darley essay contest, and yeah, that's my mini whatever mic drop moment.
Great stuff, Kevin. Thank you. Well, yeah, I want to thank everybody for being on this call. I think it's really remarkable that we get us all together and have this conversation, and, next year add somebody new to it. So get your essays written and get ready to submit those into Darley. Make sure you check out Darley and everything that they're doing for our industry, the fire industry and beyond. But get involved and get your thoughts and ideas out there, because we want to hear them. And there's a bunch of great judges that are going to read these over and select the winners. Also, check out Jamie's podcast, Ignition Leadership Podcast, correct? I got that right? Yep, on all your major platforms. So go ahead and subscribe to that and take a listen, and some more good stuff that just keeps the conversation going and puts new thoughts and ideas out there. So you got anything else, Kerry?
No, we will make sure that we post the link up for Darley once it's open for submission. So follow us on social and we'll keep you updated.
Yeah, sounds good. So kind of a cool spot to have Kerry be a guest on her own show. So I had a lot of fun with that. I hope she did too.
Great job hosting.
Well, we might be at the Virginia Fire Rescue Conference here in a few days. It's not looking too good with a foot of snow in southeastern Virginia. That's more than here in Illinois, which is crazy. So we'll see. We'll see if we get something together and make that all happen here later this week. But if not, yeah, we'll get this posted up here and we'll be live from there if I make it there or not, and we'll keep it going. But thanks again, everyone, for joining us. Lindsay, enjoy your weather down there. It was a great talk and great time. Thank you. As we wrap up another episode, this has been Kyle
And Kerry
from the Heat of Command podcast.
Thank you, as always, for listening. Please make sure to follow and subscribe on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. And as always, we love the feedback. Keep it coming.
See you next time.